Okay, good morning everyone. So we'll start the session. So in this session, we'll be discussing about the various scheduling algorithms. So without wasting time, we'll just jump into them. So we have discussed about different scheduling algorithms, right? Something called SCFS, we already discussed it in the previous session, just a revision part. So this is something 2433, I just modified it. So based on that, whatever yesterday I have explained it, that is what being represented here. It's very easy, right? We have something called conway effect, nothing but the shortest process will be coming at the back of a long process. So they have to wait for a large amount of time. So that is what comes under here, conway effect. Then we discussed about something called as SGF. So in SGF, we said that SGF can basically be classified into two types, something called as primitive and non-primitive. So what do you mean by primitive? It is nothing but at any time the operating system can try to interrupt that particular process from executing in CPU. That is what we discussed as primitive. Whereas coming to non-primitive, what we said is once a process is allocated to that particular CPU, until and unless that process is leaving that particular CPU, no further changes can be done. Okay, so no one can interrupt that particular process. Only the process has to leave that particular CPU so that he can access the information. Apart from that, no one can try to print that particular thing. That's what comes under non-primitive. So yesterday we have seen an example of a non-primitive here, where once a process is allocated to the CPU, that process itself will leave the CPU until and unless no other process can try to leave it. Okay. So in that case, we discussed about this particular diagram where we have four different processes and they have a burst time. Means this is the time required for the process to execute it. Now all these processes are coming at arrival. The arrival time for all these processes, what we discussed is 0 milliseconds. Now, when this particular process is executed, so based upon, since we don't have any arrival times here, so we are simply taking as 0 milliseconds, all came at the same time. So based upon the identity, we are allocating the processes. Okay. So here, whichever the process is having the lowest burst time, that will be allocated first. So that you can see here, process P4 is having the lowest burst time. So we simply allocated to that. So it initially started at 0 milliseconds. So how much time it required to execute? 3. So that is what we represented here. Then after completion of this, means once this process completes execution with the CPU, then only we can allow the CPU to the next process. This process has to leave. So when he is leaving at 3 milliseconds, then we determine which process is having the lowest next CPU burst. So which one is having here? 6, P1. So immediately we allocated P1 to the CPU. Now the P1 is performing its task. So 6 plus 3 is nothing but, so 9 milliseconds total time it has taken. Then after P1, which one is shortest we have here is nothing but P3, which has a CPU burst of 7 milliseconds. So we are allocating that. So 7 millisecond time it is executing here. So 9 plus 7 is 16. Then finally we have the last CPU process which comes into the, which we are having here, something called as P2, which is having a 8 milliseconds of burst time. So finally get that, so 24. So the waiting time for the process P1, what we can say, as I told you, the left part, whatever we are having, that we need to consider, that is 3 milliseconds. What about P2? So P2 is having 16 milliseconds. Then P3. So P3 is having 9 milliseconds here. Finally P4. So initially we initiated P4 first. So it started at 0 milliseconds. Now what is the average waiting time we do have here is nothing but, so 3 plus 16 plus 9 plus 0 but 4. So that is nothing but average. Whatever the values we got here, the waiting time of individual process. So that we are doing average here. That is nothing but waiting time of P1 plus P2 plus P3 plus P4. So by the total processes, how many is 4? So that is what we are doing. So how much we got here is 7 milliseconds. Then we discuss about the turnaround time. Turnaround time is nothing but the total time taken by the process to complete its entire task. Maybe it may be waiting for some other request or maybe waiting for either a request or something. The total time taken for that process to complete is what we call it as turnaround time. So for the process P1, how much time it has taken? So as I told you in the previous session, for turnaround time, you have to take the right side of that particular border. So P1 right side border, so how much time it has taken is 9 milliseconds to complete the task. Whereas coming to P2, if you talk about, here is the P2, so it has taken around 24 milliseconds to complete the task. Then finally what we have is P3. Okay, so P3 has taken how much? 16 milliseconds time to execute it. Finally, we have P4, which has taken 3 milliseconds of time. So the total average turnaround time will be nothing but the average of the turnaround times of individual processes. So this is the way it actually exists. This is what we call non-primitive. So you can see there is no preemption here. Once the process is allocated to the CPU, it is performing its task and then it is coming out. So there is no hold kind of scenario here. Now coming to the next one, since we said that we shortest job first can also be called as a primitive version. We do have a primitive version of your SGF. Okay, so that is what we usually call it as shortest remaining time first. With whichever the process having the shortest remaining time, that will be allocated to the process, and whichever the process is already executing, that will be removed from the CPU. Let's see how. So first I'll explain with the help of this particular diagram so that you can understand this problem, and then I'll show you pictorially, graphical representation. So initially, as I told you that every process will initially start at 0 milliseconds. So this time you people can see there is one more additional column here. We call it as arrival time. Now based upon this arrival time, we need to perform the operation. So these are also at time 0 milliseconds. This is milliseconds time. Okay. So at time 0 millisecond, who came? Process P1 came. Now what is the total time required by the process P1 here is 8 milliseconds. So we are not bothered right now since there is only single process we have at time interval 0 millisecond, we'll simply assign it P1. Now the process P1 started executing within the CPU. So when 1 millisecond task is completed, so when 1 millisecond time is completed, another process came, that is P2. Now we need to check here. So in case it is a non-primitive, even though it came at 1 millisecond, we will not bother. Only P1 will be continuing execution if it is non-primitive. But since here we are talking about primitive, so here what happens is first it will check the burst time of the P1 and P2. So what is the burst time of P2 we do have here is 4 milliseconds. Now at what time arrival time interval 1. So at time interval 1, the process P1 has already executed some portion. How much time it has executed? 1 millisecond time he has already executed. So what is the remaining time we are left with P1 is 7 milliseconds, because already 1 millisecond task he has completed when this process P2 has arrived. Now we need to compare this 4 with 7. So which one is shortest here? Obviously 4 is shorter than 7. So immediately what the system will do is it will preempt that particular process. It will be preempting. Just a minute. So it will be actually preempting that particular process. Which process? P1, because he requires additional 7 milliseconds to complete the task. But the process P2 is having only 4 milliseconds. So we need to assign P4 that particular CPU. So we are allocated. So what we did here, we simply removed that process P1, even though he requires still 7 milliseconds. Already 1 millisecond he has completed. Still he requires 7 milliseconds time. We preempted that process and allocated the CPU to the process P4. Now, so this process started executing. So at time interval 2 milliseconds. At time interval 2 milliseconds, who came? P3 came into picture. He came into the ready queue. Now here when he came, again the operating system has to see which one is shortest. Now at time interval 2 milliseconds, process is already executing. So how much time he has completed here? So he has completed 1. So the duration is 1 millisecond he has completed. So what is the remaining time left here? For the process P2, it's around 3 milliseconds, because 1 millisecond task the process P4 has already completed. Now what about P3? He is having 9 milliseconds. So we need to compare these two. So 9 is obviously greater than 3. So we are not going to preempt this time. Why? Because the time required by the process P3 is more when compared to the time required by process P2. So we will not be preempting here. We will allow that particular process P4 to continue execution. We are not going to print it because the burst time of the process P2 is less than P3. Okay, next. After 3 milliseconds, so 1, so here it was 2 and here it is something like 3 milliseconds. Okay, so at 3 milliseconds what happened? P4 came into existence. Now again we need to work out. Now how much time this process P4 has executed? This is 1 unit time, right? So 1, 2, 3. So it is 1 unit time, 1. So 2 units he has completed. 2 units of time or 2 milliseconds task this process P4 has completed. Then still how much is left for P2? So 2 milliseconds he has executed. How many more milliseconds required? 2 milliseconds are required. So here we will be comparing this 2 with 5. So which one is shortest? Obviously P2 is shortest. So we will be allocating that particular P2 here. So we are not going to preempt the process, something called as P2. Automatically, sorry, this is P4 I written it. This is P2. Sorry for that. So we will allow only P2 to keep on executing. Why? Because P2 is having very less time compared to the remaining. P4 also. P4 requires 5 milliseconds, but P2 requires 2. So we will allow only P2 to complete its execution. Okay. So we are allowing only P2 to complete its execution. So how much time P2 requires here now? 4 milliseconds. So 4 plus 1 is 5. So he has executed totally for 5 milliseconds. Now after that what happened? Do we have any other, after 3 milliseconds, do we have any other processes here? No. Now we can go based upon the shortest one. Now this process, so if you observe here, P1 has completed perfectly. So you can remove it. Next, what are the remaining process? We have P1, P3, P4. Now based upon the shortest job, you can go right now since we don't have any other process arriving here. Okay. So if you see here, which one is shortest? 7, 9, 5. So 5 is the shortest. Now we will allocate the CPU to process 4. So 5 plus 5 is 10. After this, which one is having P1? So definitely we will be allocating P1, the shortest one. So 10 plus 7 is something like 17. Okay. And then finally P3. So P3 is allocated. So 17. So this is finally P3. So 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 17. What will be the value here? 17. 9 plus sorry. We are allocating P3. Yeah, 9 plus 7. So 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So it is something 26 milliseconds. Okay, so this is the way you people can get the Gantt chart. Now here there is a small difference here. Determining the waiting time will be somewhat different because here the processes, there are multiple times the process is coming up. So we need to determine how much time it is taking. Let us say what is the waiting time of the process P1. So basically what we need to see is what is the total waiting. So here we do have a formula. The formula is total waiting time of the process. So what is you mean by total waiting time of a process here? Nothing but wherever the latest process is coming up, that portion you have to see. For example, if you see here P1, P1 has come up 2 times here. Which is the latest? This one is the latest. For that, what is the waiting time we do have here? This one. So we are going to write. So this is the total waiting time of the process P1 minus how much it has executed previously. How much time this particular process has executed previously. So where it came up here. So how much time it has executed? It has executed only 1 millisecond time. So 10 minus 1 minus arrival time when this particular process came. So when this particular P1 came at arrival time 0. So 0. That is equal to 9 milliseconds. Is it clear? This is what you people have to keep in mind. So when we people have multiple process, means the process is coming multiple times, how we can calculate the waiting time here is the total waiting time of the process, means whichever the latest we are seeing that particular process, that we need to see, and in that the left hand portion, whatever the value we have, that we are going to dump it up, minus how many times it has executed earlier, how much time it has executed earlier. So earlier it has come up only one time, and that too he has executed only for 1 millisecond time. So that is what I have written here, minus 1 minus 0. Why we are written is this is your arrival time. So that arrival time is nothing but your 0. So that is 9 milliseconds. Then what is the waiting time for the process P2 then? So we need to see the latest. Do we got P2 anywhere else again? This is P3. So we did not get anywhere P2. So definitely we have to select this. So the left portion what we have is 1. So 1 minus, did it execute earlier? No. So the value will be 0 minus, what is the arrival time for the process P2 here? At 1 millisecond it has come up. So 1 minus 1. So at 0 millisecond, the waiting time for the process is 0 milliseconds. Logically you can understand the P2 has come up at 1 millisecond. At that time only we have allocated it. So it did not wait for anything. So 1 minus 1 is 0 milliseconds. Then we have process P3. So process P3, how many times it got executed? Only one time. So we are going to take the total waiting time here 17 minus previously how much time it has executed. Well, it did not execute earlier here. If you see here, we don't have anywhere P3 here. So we can write 0 minus, what is the arrival time for the process P3 here? 2. So 2. So he has waited for 15 milliseconds. And then finally what we have is process P4, same thing. So the process P4 has come up only one time. So you are going to take the left portion, 5 minus, he did not execute before, right? One time only, so minus 0 minus, what is the arrival time? 3. So that is 2 milliseconds. So finally what is the waiting time? 9 plus 0 plus 15 plus 2 by 4. So this is something 9 plus 10, 25, 26 by 4. So that is something 4, 6, 24, right? 6.5 milliseconds or something like that, I think, if I'm not wrong. So this is the way you people have to do the waiting time of this particular, how to find the average waiting time. So this is a small difference here, okay? Then coming to the turnaround time, how we can determine, that is very common. The turnaround time for your process P1 will be something how much time it has started and executed. So P1 has completed wherever it has come up latest, right portion, that is 17. Then we have something called as P2. So P2 has come up at which particular, so right hand side, what is the value we have? 5 milliseconds. Then we have something called P3. So P3 has come up for which seconds? 26. And then finally P4. So P4 has come up for 10 milliseconds, right hand portion, this one, so 10 milliseconds. So 7 plus 5 plus 26 plus 10 by 4. So what are the value people are getting? So that will be your average turnaround time for your entire scenario. So this is the way you people have to execute it. Now I will show you graphically so that you can understand that easily. Okay. Yeah. Here, this is the diagram, I think what we got here, isn't it? So first initially we have allocated process P1 first. So P1 started executing since it has come up time interval 0. But after 1 millisecond, this particular process P2 came. So process P2 is having 4 milliseconds, he requires 4 milliseconds time. But P1 has already executed this portion. So what is this portion? 1 millisecond. So what is the remaining we have out of 8 milliseconds? 7 milliseconds time is there for the process P1 requires to complete the task. But since 7 is greater than 4, we will be printing this particular process and will allocate CPU to this particular process, something called as P2, because it is having 4 milliseconds. Now he has executed for 1 millisecond, something like here, it will be 2. I have shown you in the diagram, isn't it? So something like, here it will be like 2, 3, 4. Each unit is 1 millisecond. So at the time interval, what happened? 2. So at this portion, P3 came. But at that time, this P2 has already executed 1 millisecond time. So how much left here? 3. So 9 is greater than 3, right? We are comparing with P3. P3 is having greater value when compared to P2. So we did not preempt P2. We allowed P2 to execute. Then at time interval 3, that is this portion, when the time has reached here, P4 came. So at that time, P2 has already executed 2 milliseconds task here. 2 millisecond task he has already completed. So what is the remaining? 4 minus 2 is 2. Now P4 when it came, so he requires P2 2 milliseconds time, whereas coming to P4 he requires 5 milliseconds time. Obviously this is less, so we did not preempt it, we allowed P2 to execute it. So P2 completed. So how much time required by P2 here? The total time how much he requires? 4 milliseconds. So 4 plus 1 is 5. Then after this, we did not, after 4 milliseconds, 5 milliseconds, we did not get a time interval, we did not get any process, so we can directly go ahead. So how we can do, so what are the remaining process left? P1, P3, P4. So 7, 9, 5, which is shortest P4. We allocated P4 to the CPU. So 5 plus 5 is 10. After this completion, now P2 is completed, then we are left with only P1 and P3. So P1 is having 7, P3 is having 9. Which one is shortest? P1. So we have allocated CPU to P1. So 10 plus 7 is 17. This portion completed. Then finally came P3 here. So P3 finally, we don't have any other process, no need to compare, directly give it to the CPU. So we gave it to the CPU. So what is the portion? 9. So 9 plus 7 is around 26. 9, 17 plus 9 is 26. So this is what you got. So finally, waiting times. Now this is the formula which I have explained you. Waiting time is equal to total waiting time. Means wherever the latest that particular process came, like P1 came here, this is latest. Already it is there. First time, second. So second time wherever it has come up, that if it is coming third time, that third time value we need to take. So total waiting time is 10 minus number of milliseconds the process executed before. So before how many milliseconds he has executed? 1. So this will be like 10 minus 1 minus arrival time. What is the arrival time for the P1? 0. So that is 9 milliseconds. So I'll show you practically so that you can understand. Here it is. So you can understand 10 minus 1 minus 0, isn't it? So what you got? 9 milliseconds. Same way if you talk about here something called as P2. So P2 is like 10 minus 0 minus 1. So what do you mean by 1 here? So P2 has come up only one time. The left portion what we have 1 minus how many times it has executed before? Well, he has executed for the first time. He has just completed the task. So 1 minus 0 minus what is the arrival time? Here we for P2 1. So 0 milliseconds. 5 2. So I think if people got what is the average waiting time we got. Now coming to the turnaround time, if we talk about here, the turnaround time formula what we have is turnaround time minus arrival time. Why we are taking here arrival time? Because earlier we did not take arrival time. The reason is at that time we discussed that all these processes have arrived at time interval 0 milliseconds. That's the reason we did not use any formula like this. But actually if there are time intervals there, we need to use this formula. Whatever we are writing, turnaround time minus arrival time. Okay, but earlier we said all the processes are coming at time interval, arrival time 0 milliseconds. So whatever you are doing with the means whatever the turnaround time you are getting, minus 0 will be same value. That's the reason we did not consider that. But here we need to consider because these processes are coming in different time intervals. Okay, so what will be turnaround time for this? We have so turnaround time for the process P1, what we have, the latest one is 17, 17 minus arrival time. So it will be 17 milliseconds. What about P2, right hand portion, 5 minus P2 arrived at 1. So 5 minus 1 is 4 milliseconds. Same way P3, 26 minus 2. So that will be 24 milliseconds and finally this. Now we need to calculate the average. So this will be something like this. The average waiting time is 9 plus 0. So 6.5 milliseconds we got it. And whereas coming to the bottom part, what we got is 23 milliseconds. There we got something else. Okay, so that we did not do arrival time. So we need to consider this arrival time in order to perform it. So this is the way you people can solve the shortest job first scheduling algorithm. This is primitive. Now in your exam, he may be asking it. Okay, if he is not asking you whether primitive or non-primitive, then automatically you can go ahead using non-primitive. But in case if he is asking you primitive, then you have to follow this particular process. So please do remember this particular formula. Based on this formula, you need to do turnaround time. How we can find turnaround time minus arrival time of a process. Whereas coming to waiting time is nothing but the total waiting time of a process minus the number of milliseconds the process has executed before minus the arrival time. So this will give you the entire portion. I hope it is very clear with you. So we will see that with a small example, one more example. Okay, so we do have a time, we'll take little time and I'll explain it. Okay, so let us take one more example I'll give you so that you can understand clearly. So we have again 4 processes P1, P2, P3, P4. Okay, so every process is having arrival time and burst time. So every process will have arrival time and burst time. So for the process P1, we have a burst time 6. Okay. The arrival time for the process is 2, burst is 6. Then we have P2. So this is something 5 2. If you talk about P3, we have 1, 8. Then we have 0, 3. Okay, we have one more here, P5. So P5 process is going to take 4, 4. So this is the problem I gave you, and you people have to solve it up. So how to do this? Now the first step what you people have to do is first arrange them based upon your arrival time. Based upon your arrival time, arrange them. So arrival time what we have 0, 1, 2, 4 and 5. Just write it up. 0, 1, 2, 4, 5. Now based on this write down the value. So 0 means 3. Okay, 1 means 8. 2 means 6. 4, 4. What about 5? It is 2. Based on that write down the process. So 0 means P4. So P4 came at time interval 0. What about P1? I mean, one time interval is P3. So P3 came here. So it's something like P3. Then P1. So P1. Then we have P5. And finally we have P2. Arrange it in this way. Okay. Based upon your time, arrival time. Now let's draw the Gantt chart and I'll explain you how. So we are applying, see, we can do this problem in two ways, non-primitive and primitive. I am explaining you with respect to primitive. Non-primitive, you can do it on your own. Okay, you just can try it up. I am just explaining you primitive here. So if time permits, I'll explain you non-primitive also. The time interval 0, which process came? P4. So at that time interval, no other process was there. So we simply allocated P4. Okay. But at time now, this process P4 started executing now. Now when this process P4 was executing, so at 1 millisecond time, this process came, P3. Okay. Now we need to compare because we are applying here non-primitive algorithm. We are applying non-primitive. Sorry, primitive. My mistake. So we are applying primitive, so definitely we need to do the comparison part. So at time interval 1, P3 came. So what is the burst time? P3 is having 8. So in the meantime, this process P4 has already executed for 1 millisecond time. So how much time still he requires? 2 milliseconds. Now 2 is less than 8, isn't it? So definitely we are not going to print that P4. We will tell the process P3 to wait until this P4 is completing. Okay. Then at time interval 2 milliseconds, P1 arrives. Okay. The time interval 2 milliseconds, P1 has arrived. So what is at that time what happened? P4 has already executed for 2 milliseconds. So 3 out of 3, 2 milliseconds, the process P4 has completed. So 3 minus 2, how much we get here is 1. So I'll just erase and I'll write it so that you can understand here. So 3 minus 2 is, so he has left with how many milliseconds? 1 millisecond. Who process P4? When this particular process came. Now 1 is less than 6, isn't it? So definitely we are not going to print the P4. We will ask the P1 to wait. Okay. So fine. So this process is executing here. Now at time 3 milliseconds. So he requires how many 3 milliseconds? Is it? At 3 milliseconds, the process P4 has completed its entire task. So we did not print anything here. We are simply writing it P4. Okay, I'll just erase this also so that you can understand clearly now. So P4 we did not print it. So how much time it requires? 3 milliseconds. So 0 plus 3 is 3 milliseconds. So by 3 milliseconds he has completed execution. Now the next process arrived at which particular millisecond? 4. So here means what does that mean? From 3 to 4 this slot is empty because the 3 to 4 means from in between 3 to 4 no process is there. So what we will do is from the previous process which came up at 1 millisecond and 2 millisecond, we will try to compare which one is having the shortest job. Which one is having shortest? P1, isn't it? 6 is less than 8. So we will allocate in this slot P1. So P1 has performed for 1 millisecond. At time interval 4 millisecond when it was, then P5 came into the picture. Now P5 requires how many milliseconds of time? Burst time is 4. But already P1 is executing. So how much time it has executed? 1 millisecond. What is the remaining time for the P1? We have 5 milliseconds. Now if you see here, P5 is having 4 milliseconds, whereas coming to P1 is having 5 milliseconds at time interval 4. So what we are going to do, we'll simply print this P1. We'll remove this P1 at time interval 4. So he has P1 has executed only for 1 millisecond. So what is the remaining time P1 requires is 5 milliseconds. Now we will allocate that process CPU to process 5. I hope it is very clear. So we have allocated the process to P5. Now P5 started functioning. So when 1 millisecond is completed, this process, another process came, something called P2. And what is the burst time? P2 requires 2 milliseconds. But in the meantime, P5 has already executed for 1 millisecond. How much time he requires? 3 milliseconds time he requires. So we will be simply printing P5 because 3 is greater than 2. So we'll stop here and we'll allow the CPU to P2. Now CPU will start functioning here. Okay. So CPU will automatically start performing that particular thing. CPU will start executing P2. So since we don't have any other process less than that, automatically we can allocate. So P2 we are allocating it. So P2 will perform for how many 2 milliseconds. So 5 plus 2 is 7. So now P2 is completed, isn't it? P4 is completed. So what are the remaining portions we have? P3, P1, P5. Now among, so since after 5 milliseconds, we don't have any other, arrival time 5 milliseconds, we don't have any other process. What we can do now? So based upon shortest job, we will be going up. So we have 8 milliseconds, 5 and 3. Which one is shortest? P5. We will allocate P5 now. So he will be executing whole because remaining we don't have any. Now in case if any other process is coming in between, then we need to check. Since there is no process coming in between, P5 can start executing. So P5 requires how much amount of time? He requires 3 milliseconds. So 7 plus 3 is 10 milliseconds. So P5 completed. Then remaining is P3 and P1. So P1 is having 5 milliseconds, P3 has 8. So we will be allocating P1. Now P1 will execute for 5 milliseconds. So 10 plus 5 is 15. And after this, finally P3. So 8 milliseconds. So that is around 8 plus 15 is 23. Once you get this chart, everything becomes easy now. See here now. We got this chart. Now we people can try to find. So what is the waiting time for the process P1? So P1, how many times it got executed? Just see based upon the formula we have here and we are having here 2. So what is the latest we have here? So total waiting time is 10 minus what is the total amount of time it has executed earlier. So it has executed for 1 millisecond, isn't it? So 10 minus 1 minus what is the arrival time for the process P1? So P1 arrival time is 2. So 2. So 10 minus, so it's around 7 milliseconds. Then what is the waiting time for the process P2? So P2, how many times it got executed? Only one time it got executed here. So we'll take the second left portion. So 5 minus, did it execute earlier here? No. So 5 minus 0 minus, okay, what is the arrival time for the process P2 here? 5. So 5. So what is the waiting time for the process P2 is 0 millisecond. Don't forget to write the milliseconds. The units are most important. So what is the waiting time for the process P3 now? So wherever P3 executed, here it has executed. So 15 minus, did it execute before? No. 0 minus arrival time for the P3 is 1. So 14 milliseconds. Same way, what is the waiting time for P4? So did it execute also? Okay, one time only it executed. So the total waiting time is 0 minus what is the arrival time? Okay, well, did it execute earlier? No. So we are representing as 0 minus what is the arrival time for the process P4? 0. So 0 milliseconds. So what about P5? So P5, okay, now see here, P5 has executed, we got 2 times. Take the latest one. So that is 7 minus how many times it has executed earlier. So it has executed one time and that is for 1 millisecond. So 1 minus arrival time. So P5 is having 4. So I think it is 2 milliseconds. So what is the average? You can do it. 7 plus 0 plus 14 plus 0 plus 2. by 5. So what are the value you people are getting? That is your in milliseconds. Okay, you people can do the calculation part. So this is the way how you people can find the waiting time for the process. Same way you people can also calculate the turnaround time. What is turnaround time is nothing but for the process P1. Turnaround time for the process P1 is here, latest one, 15. Minus arrival time. What is the arrival time for the P1? 2. So 13 is your process time. Next, for the P2. So if you talk about P2 here, yeah, here it has executed one time. So turnaround time is the right side of we have to calculate 7 minus, so here 7 minus, what is the arrival time for the P2? We have here 5. So this is nothing but 2. Then we have something called P3. So P3, how much we have here? 23. So 23 minus, P3 is having arrival time 1. So that is 22 milliseconds. Then we have something called P4 and P5. So P4 is equal to how much? 3. Only one time executed. So 3 minus arrival time is 0. So 3 millisecond time it has taken. When it's coming to P5, P5 executed 2 times the right portion. We have to take 10. So 10 minus 4. That is 6 milliseconds. So we can do the average now. 13 plus 2 plus 22 plus 3 plus 6 by 5. So what are the value people are getting? You people can just do it up and that you will be getting in milliseconds. Now this is the way whole this particular scenario works. This is the way you people the SGF do. This is non-primitive. Okay, this is primitive. Non-primitive directly we will be doing. We will not be considering the arrival time here because whichever the process comes first, that's at time interval 0, 4, P4 came. We'll allocate P4 here. I'll just show you the Gantt chart so that it becomes easy for you. 0, P4. Okay, P4 will be executing for how many seconds? The burst time is 3. So I'm giving it as 3. After that, which time interval 1? Okay, so time interval 1 P3 came, but we will not allocate P3 to that particular process. Why? Because this is non-primitive. So once the process is allocated, he will complete the task, then he will come out. Okay, so after that, what will happen? Another time interval P3, 1 came. Okay, so among them, what will happen? So after 3, 4. So time interval 2, P1 came. That also we did not allocate. After that, P2 came. That also we did not allocate. So after this, what we'll do it automatically based upon this, whichever is the shortest, we will be allocating that and we'll perform our operation. So after P4, what will come? So 2, 3. So burst arrival time is 2. Then we have 3. We don't have 3 here, no? So we have 1. So among these two, we'll be allocating 1. So P3 will be allocated. So P3 will start executing. He was there in the ready queue. So P3 will be executed. After that P3, it will be executing other process. What is the other one which came? Time, burst time is 2. So P2 will be allocated. So on. In this way, the entire process takes place. It's very easy. Okay, this is the way it actually works. So I hope it is very clear with this. This is the way you people have to do shortest job for scheduling algorithm. Two types. Next we have something called as okay. He's talking about the advantages and disadvantages here. So advantage is this is one of the most optimal algorithm and compared to your previous algorithms whatever we discussed. We have 4 to 5 type of algorithms. Among them, this is the most optimal algorithm. It will give you the average waiting time will be very less compared to other scheduling algorithms. Okay, and the best part is the shortest process need not have to wait for longer one because whichever is shortest that we are going to allocate first. That's why the shortest process may not have to start for the long processes to complete. But we do have certain disadvantages here. The disadvantage is how we can allocate a shortest process first means definitely we should know the burst time of that particular process in advance. If we don't know that, it's highly impossible. But knowing your future is very difficult, isn't it? How we can know whether what is the short, until and unless that process is coming into the system, we cannot know what is the length of that particular CPU burst. So definitely predicting that is very, very difficult. So what this SGF does is, it will try to predict. So whatever the new process is coming, it will just predict that maybe the length of this particular process is this much. And based on that, it will try to perform the operation. That is the way it actually does. how, in order to predict it, they use the exponential averages using which they actually do it. They have a formula, something Tn plus 1. That's not most important here. So Tn plus 1 is nothing but Tn, small tn plus, sorry, alpha Tn plus 1 minus alpha into tau n. So this is the formula they actually use in order to predict it up. Okay, so what do you mean by alpha? The alpha is in the range of 0 to 1. So if it is 0, automatically the value becomes tau n plus 1 becomes tau n. Okay, so that is nothing but whichever the latest CPU means processors come up, that only whatever the CPU burst for that particular processor is allocated, it will be determining it. Else it will just take the last, whichever the previous one, whatever it is having. So this is the basic formula he has given. That's not much important. This is what the main you people have to focus on. This is what way we need to actually concentrate. The next one is what we have is priority scheduling. This is almost similar to SGF, but the reverse of it means whichever having the highest priority will be allocated. This is also primitive and non-primitive, but mostly we'll use it for primitive purposes because he's talking about priority. Okay. So here we can use, as I told you, we can allocate for primitive and non-primitive. So we will mostly use for primitive purpose this one. So here the problem that arises with priority scheduling is starvation. Like something like we have multiple processes. Let us suppose we have multiple processes coming in the system, and the higher priority processes, what they will do is they will try to dump these low priority processes. Why? Because the low priority processes will get a chance only when there are no processes which they are having highest priority. So obviously that's not possible. If high priority processes are coming, definitely the low priority process has to wait. This is something like you people are standing in a queue in Simachalam. Okay. So let us take example. You people are standing in a queue. So suddenly one minister came there. So what will happen? You people, the people who are standing in the line, these people become something like low priority processes there. What is high priority process there right now? That whoever the MLA or the politician came, he is the high priority process. So he will begin. So what we'll do? Even though we are ready to perform the task, we have to start. Now let us suppose after this MLA, suddenly CM came. What will happen? Again, the low priority process will have to wait. The entire day, all the ministers, chief ministers, prime minister, other cabinet minister, these people are visiting the Simachalam temple. What will happen? We will be standing in the queue for the whole day. What we are doing exactly, we are starving there. Why? Because it is high priority processes are coming, they are not allowing us to execute the process. Means they are not allowing us to have the darshan of our Lord. Okay, so that's what is. Here, the only problem with the priority scheduling algorithm is it results in starvation. How we can overcome this? Means we have a technique here. We have a technique called paging. We have a technique called paging. So using this technique, we can execute our task. This paging technique we can use. Sorry, not paging. It's aging. So using this particular aging technique, we can execute our task. What exactly happens in this aging is nothing but whichever the low priority process is there, we will try to improve its priority every 15 seconds or 15 minutes. And for example, we have priority from 1 to 127. The 1 is the highest priority, 127 is the lowest priority. So every 15 seconds, this priority, this particular PN process priority will change. Like after every 15 minutes or 15 seconds, PN will be having a priority of 126. After every 15 minutes, let us suppose it will have 125. So every 15 minutes, again this process will have 124 in this way. So finally this will get a chance. At stage will come when PM will have a priority 1. He will execute his task. Okay, so this is the way it actually works. Now one more point what we need to keep in mind related to priority is basically priority can be given in the range of 0 to 7 or 0 to 4095. But there is no exact confirmation related which one to be considered as highest, which one to be considered as lowest. For example, some systems may be using 0 as lowest priority, 7 as highest priority, whereas some systems may be considering 0 as highest priority and 7 as lowest priority. That depends totally upon the operating system as well as the hardware device what we are using. So if you are using HP laptop, it will have a different kind of priority. Maybe it is using 0 as highest priority. If you are having a Dell laptop, it might be using something called 7 as highest priority, 0 as lowest priority. That depends upon the system. So and the operating system what we are using. So in this scenario, we are considering 0 as highest priority for our understanding and 7 as lowest priority. Okay. The higher the number, the lowest the priority. The lower the number, the highest the priority. That is what we are actually going to consider. So as I told you, aging is a technique using which we can do that. So let's take example. So we have, so in place of arrival time, we are having something called priority here. So process P2 is having 1, means this is the highest priority means. So all this, what we have to do is, the arrival time is not provided. We are assuming that the arrival time for all the process 0 milliseconds. So all have arrived at 0 milliseconds time. Now, so without wasting time, we'll just go ahead. So this is the Gantt chart for your primitive STL, sorry, not, okay, just modified it. This is not STL, this is your priority. I did not modify this, priority. Okay. So here if you see here, the process P2 is having 1. So we allocated process P2 to the CPU. And moreover, this is not primitive, non-primitive. This is non-primitive. So after that, what happened? Which one is having the lowest priority? 2. 2 is the next highest priority. So P5, we allocated P5. It is simply executing it. Then we have something called as P1, third priority. So third one is P1. So we allocated P1. After this 4, so we allocated P3, then 5, P4. Remaining process is same. You can understand, you can get this values. The process is same here. So the waiting time for the process P1 is 6 minus 0. So that is nothing but P1. So P1 has, that is nothing but arrival time minus burst time. Since the arrival time is 0, we are not considering arrival time. How many times it executed before? That we are doing it. Okay. So here what we are doing, 6 minus 0 for the P1. P1 is 6 minus when it has arrived P1, I mean what we call 0. So 0 milliseconds. Okay, 6 minus arrival time, 0 milliseconds. It has arrived at 0. Everything is 0, that is represented as 0 here. Now what about P2? Waiting time is 0 minus arrival time is 0 milliseconds, so 0. Waiting time for the process P3 is 16. So 16 minus, it has arrived at 0 milliseconds, 16. In case we have arrival time different, then we need to do that particular thing. Okay. So we need to suppose 1, 2, 3 like this is given. So P1 is 6 minus 1. It will be 6 minus 1. In case arrival time is given. Since here it is not given, we don't have to consider that. So waiting time for the process P4, 18 minus 0, so 18 milliseconds, 1 millisecond. So finally you will be getting the average waiting time. So here the turnaround time. So directly we can get the value since no arrival time is there, direct value. So P1 it will take the rightmost path 16, P2 is here 1 millisecond, P3 18, P4 19, P5 6. So finally the average waiting time is 8.2 milliseconds and the average turnaround time is 12 milliseconds. Please do remember this is not primitive, this is non-primitive. Okay, this is non-primitive. This is non-primitive priority scheduling algorithm. Please do remember. Okay. If it is primitive, what will happen here is, if suppose, I'll just explain here only so that you can understand. Now, after some time, another process came P6. Burst time is 5. And he is having a, since 1 is already executed, now P2 is already executed. Now this prior process is having 1. So when, let us suppose at that time, P5 is executing it. So what will happen when this particular process came? He is having highest priority now. We will be printing this process and will allocate CPU to this particular process. He will start executing. Once this is completed, then CPU will bring, means CPU is allocated to P5, then it will start executing it. This is the whole bit exactly works. Okay, so after that we have something called as round robin. Okay, so coming to round robin, okay, we'll discuss this in the next session. We'll stop here.